Hello, my name is Barry Miller, and I have the privilege of being able to talk to somebody who is a member of a very legendary family in Australia called the Brock family. And that happens to be Lewis Brock. His brother, Peter Brock, 9 times Bathurst champion, King of the Mountain. And what we're here today is to talk about the latest miniseries that Lewis has some reasonably strong opinions about. He just really passionately knows the truth about what's happened in the past with Peter's life. And do you think, like a miniseries, which is a combination of fact or fiction, can successfully show the depiction of the life of a person?
Well, firstly, Barry, thanks for talking to me today. I don't think you've really got any alternative to changing the story somewhat, because you've only got 3 to 4 hours to tell a story which is a lifetime. So, in essence, yes, I think it can be done and can be done very effectively with certain conditions. Barry, yeah.
Did you give the miniseries a pass or a fail mark?
Barry, I gave it a fail. Not a huge fail, but it was a fail. I recorded the whole miniseries. I had made a decision that we've got relatives in the United States and I was going to send it over. I'm not going to do that. I just think it's too far away from depicting Peter's life accurately.
Where did it really fail as far as you're concerned?
Well, it started with the first scene, actually. There was a scene where Peter's racing the Austin A30, which is his first race car, on the streets around Hurstbridge, so-called rural Victoria. He was drinking a can of beer and he was with a girl and outrunning the police. Now, that is so far from the truth and so far from being an accurate depiction of the sort of person Peter was. It was kind of ludicrous from the beginning.
So, obviously, this is media. They want to attract attention, and that type of stuff probably does attract attention. But also, where do you think the miniseries sort of passed, as far as you're concerned, as far as some of the positives?
The positives, well, I thought that the acting was actually very good. I felt that the actors were well chosen. I particularly liked Harry Firth and Alan Moffat, but I also liked the actor who portrayed Peter and Bev and Julie. I thought they were very good. I think the issue goes back to scripting and the number of distortions that occurred in the scripting. I'll give you an example. Bev is depicted as being courted by Peter in Perth when they first got together. That was just not true. What happened was that Bev actually was living in Sydney and left her husband, James then, came down to Peter's place with baby in arms and said, "Look, I've got nowhere to stay." And he took her in. That's how that happened. Now, another distortion, and I think this reflects on character. You see, this is part of my problem. Julie was depicted as being very forward to Peter, to getting him to come onto her. Peter pursued Julie. It wasn't Julie what didn't do that. And that again reflects on her character in an unreal way. I thought the party scenes were really fake in the beginning. So I'm back to the fails, Barry. Reason why I'm giving it a 4 out of 10, okay? Party scenes I thought were just faked and so far away from what really happens at parties. Very extreme. I thought that Peter being depicted as being really cocky. Look, he was quite brash and self-confident, but the kind of cockiness which went into arrogance, I just didn't see it. I just think it was inaccurate. I didn't like the way they characterised my dad. Jeff Brock wasn't a pushy guy who went out and rubbed people the wrong way. Jeff Brock was a person who was universally loved by everyone who met him. He was a terrific person. And I thought my mum's character was pretty close, strong woman, but Dad was way off beam, I thought. I was very disappointed with John Harvey's characterisation. John Harvey was a very close friend of Peter's. They raced together. When he had two cars running, he was always the lead driver in the second car. And John was a confidant of Peter's and, very competent, very important in the special vehicles days when we were building Brock Commodores. So that was disappointing because he came across in the movie as being this young, bloke in a mechanic's outfit. He wasn't a mechanic. He was an administrator, dealt with Holden dealers. And so really off scene. I really, really did not like the last scenes in Perth where they showed Peter as being out of it and fatigued and depressed and all of that. That was wrong. He wasn't like that. That's not how he went. It's not how he left the planet. It was not like that. What Peter was dealing with was he was completely happy. Now, an accident occurred, no doubt. The coroner's report, which has been recently photographed, actually says that Peter Brock there was no evidence of fatigue. And there wasn't. I drove him to the airport when he flew to Perth. He wasn't tired. He was excited. He was going there with Julie. They were on an adventure. I don't know where that came from. I don't know why a scriptwriter would do that. So my summary there would be it wasn't a question of bad acting or the bad choice of actors. It was the script, and the script was kind of wacky in a way. I don't know why they would pick up on things like Peter's state of mind at the end. Like, where would that come from? That's an invention.
Is it obvious that maybe there should have been more consultation with the Brock family as a consensus of some of the issues as far as the characterisation and facts?
In retrospect, you'd have to say that was the problem, that they didn't bother to check. Who did they talk to? I don't know who they talked to, but they didn't check. Really some basic fundamental things. Every member of the Brock family I've seen has issues with it. There are different issues because we're not all in one agreement with everything, but everyone had issues with the script. Why did this, get emphasised? That sort of thing. Yeah.
So as we know, Peter, he was, and still is, a legend in Australia as far as, just a fantastic driver and not only that, a great creative guy. I've actually had the pleasure of meeting Peter briefly, and this is a guy that has charisma, somebody who is well above just driving a car, even though he did that so well. So did Peter's character and charisma really shine through in this production?
In the whole program, and that was two 2-hour episodes, I saw two scenes which I felt showed his philanthropic side, his, side where he worked with disabled kids or deprived kids, that sort of thing. He spent 50% of his life doing that, and they had two scenes. One was when he first started doing the 05 campaign. So in the 05 campaign, he was first publicising drink driving. I think it was 75, 76. So this started a long time ago that he was doing that. And there was a scene where a young boy, he was teaching kids. It really actually showed his character as well and how he was a great speaker because he's in a high school. All these kids are sitting there watching him, and he's got all his notes, and he's reading from notes, stilted, and then he throws them down and says, "Hey, look, this is how it is, right? You got to deal with this drink driving issue because people are dying." And he started to communicate one-on-one, which is what he was brilliant at, and the kids all started to listen to him, and that's exactly true. He never worked from a script. He worked from getting a sense of the people that he was talking to, and then he would communicate with them basically on their level but with his message, and he did it really effectively. In that scene, at the end of the scene, the kids all file out of the classroom and a kid stays, and Peter sits down and talks one-on-one to him. That's the other thing he did. He talked to people one-on-one over and over and over again, thousands of people. That kid had lost a friend who had died in a drink driving accident. Someone had drunk too much. I thought that was really good. In the second episode, there was a scene right at the end before he gets into the Daytona on that fateful drive. there's a kid that he talks to who I think might be disabled, but the same sort of thing where he says, no, I'm not going to drive off. I want to sit down and talk to this boy. And he does. And that's what he did throughout his life, you know. I mean, so they didn't touch that really. They just had this couple of brief sputterings, and it's probably 10 minutes out of 4 hours. I mean, that's ridiculous. I was at Bathurst, which we just recently witnessed a couple of weeks ago. On lap 5 of the race, the commentator said, hey, we'd like all of the crowd to do a standing ovation for Peter Brock in recognition of his work and his contribution to the sport and the great charitable works he did. Lap 5, there were 200,000 people there, and they all stood up and gave him a standing ovation during a race. Fantastic. I mean, it was awesome. Yeah. Now, that wouldn't happen if he hadn't had touched other people more than being just a good racing driver. Because there have been lots of good racing drivers, you know. So, no, they failed miserably in the charismatic area. They just didn't capture it.
Yes. Well, you'd know that well anyway, because you were a director of the Brock Foundation and then the chairman of the Brock Foundation.
Correct.
Which was a visionary type of thing that Peter came up with. You know, it was incredible as far as that goes. So, have you any sort of final things that you would like to say about Peter and around his life? As you know, what we're talking about here is your interpretation, the bouquets, the warts. You know, what sums up this man?
Can I just start with a couple of things that I thought were excellent in the movie, because I think that it illustrates the kind of relationships he had. He had very, very strong relationships with. He was a great leader, so his team would do everything to get him the best car that they could have, and then they trusted him to do the best he could. The relationships that were really critical for him were well depicted in the miniseries, and probably worth seeing just in that sense. Harry Firth was shown as being his mentor. Now, they stretched the timelines with Harry Firth. They had him right at the beginning. He wasn't there when Peter built the A30. In fact, he hated the A30. He said it was a little death trap or something. But it took him all the way through to the end, where he kept coming in as being Peter's mentor. And it was actually, I thought, really well done. And I thought it was, even though it's artistic license, because it didn't really happen quite as completely as that, I thought it illustrated that Peter always went back to his basics, his basic beliefs in things, you know, his philosophy. And it was like Harry was the reminder of that. You'll come up on the screen and, you know, remember what you're doing here, because you're not just a driver. You're also someone who has a gift of communication, and you can give that gift for good. You know, you can communicate in that way. The other person was Alan Moffat. Now, they were staunch competitors in the beginning, but very respectful, but hardly talked. But always they viewed each other with genuine respect, and that was shown in the miniseries really well. The last scene in the miniseries is Alan Moffat standing on the starting grid at Bathurst and reflecting on Peter's greatness and how he contributed. And I just thought that was really beautifully done. And the guy who played Alan and who played Harry, they both were fantastic. So I don't want to can it totally, but they were fabulous, I thought. I liked the way the split with Holden was handled in general, because it was fairly balanced. It didn't just go on about the polarizer. It also acknowledged the fact that there were business considerations here. There was genuine competition for Brock's business. Remember, at that time, HDT, Peter Brock's business, was making $1 million profit every year. Holden was losing $100 million every year. This is in the 80s, like 87, 86, that era. So there was tremendous pressure on Holden to get control of Brock's business.
And you were general manager of that HDT, was that correct?
Yes, I was general manager after the split with Holden happened. So in that period when we were trying to consolidate the business, that's what we were trying to survive, really, and that was when I was general manager. Prior to that, I was merchandising manager and group projects manager and different managerial roles. But I thought it was quite good to see that there was conveyed that there was a business thing as well. It wasn't just about this crazy guy going on about the polarizer.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I've got some pluses there.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
So just to sort of wrap it up, Peter was your brother. It's 10 years since Peter's departed. What do you miss the most about the fact that Peter's not here any longer, even though he has a fantastic legacy that he's left?
Oh, they're just the conversations I'd have with him. I mean, he was just an incredibly intelligent person, and he had incredibly wide knowledge of things. So, I branched into areas that probably most motor racing people wouldn't go, but Peter did. Peter was incredible. I mean, he would talk about spiritual matters or science or things like the ozone layer or climate change or the local bicycle park in Hurstbridge or those sorts of things, bicycle trails, the community stuff he was involved in. So it was incredibly stimulating to talk to because he just had such a broad range of activities. And not only that, he got involved. I mean, he was prepared to go down and, help weed around the path and the bicycle path in Hurstbridge, that sort of thing. Very hands-on person. So I really miss that, He wasn't a theoretical person. He was very practical with quite inspirational ideas.
So what do you think in another 10 years, because we will still remember Peter, what do you think we'll think of Peter as far as that goes, as far as his effect? Did you think that anyone will come up and in Bathurst and pull off those wins? Obviously, they've only got 9 years to do it. Or do you think there will never be? Do you think there will never be a Peter Brock in that sense? The
number of wins, I don't know. It'd be a huge effort to do that. I know that Craig Lowndes was challenged with it, and I don't think he was happy with the challenge, really. I mean, you just go for it 1 year by 1 year. You don't think I'm going to win it 10 times. So, I mean, look, yes, it might. I really don't know the answer, whether it possibly could. It's an awful big ask. You'd have to have 3 or 4 co-drivers to start to do that, I think. Share the wins around,
Exactly.
Yeah, but there's a number of drivers right now on 5 or 6.
Yes, exactly.
I think Craig Lowndes and Stephen Richards, they're on 5 or 6 wins each. So, and it's certainly possible. But I don't think that. Look, in 10 years, in a genuine sense, I think that people understand Peter better now than they did 10 years ago. I think they do. And I mean, I haven't really spoken about my relationship with him until this time, which is 10 years later. I know Julie Bamford hasn't. She hasn't spoken. So, people are starting to talk about all of the different things that happened over the years, and none of us have forgotten. So I'm thinking it'll probably, he'll probably be better understood in 10 years. Plus some of his ideas, like the polarizer, are only starting to come into general mainstream thinking, magnetic power, the power of crystals, those sorts of things. That's a growing area, not a diminishing area. So who knows how that will progress as well. So I think he'll be seen as a very forward-thinking, inspirational person.
Well, as you know, most people who are visionaries are normally thought of being on the outer edge a lot of times of because they take on ideas that the general populace think may be a little bit crazy, but that's where the genius lies. Of course, is on that outer aspect, as we've seen with a person like Peter. For sure.
Yeah, I think that people like Peter are prepared to, I guess, explore those kind of areas without the fear of people judging him or the fear of people ridiculing him. He was prepared to just do it, and not everything worked out. He had lots of ideas. He invented all sorts of stuff that didn't necessarily work out. This one particularly became a political football, but he was a very innovative thinker. So, and you need people like that. I mean, dare I make in comparison to Einstein was considered to be a fool and an unintelligent boy in high school. Peter only got to year 11 in high school and left, saying this is just not happening for me. but scientifically he was very advanced. So, we should encourage people to be innovative and be prepared to explore unknown areas, shouldn't we? Not the opposite of saying we all should be the same. Ridiculous.
Exactly. And as we know, there are so many different intelligences, and some people don't necessarily fit into the school system, but put in the environment which they excel in, their genius comes out.
Yeah, definitely.
You know. Anyway, really nice to talk to you, Lewis, and I think that was a great summary of the mini-series, and even more so an insight into Peter's life and your relationship with him and your interpretation. Thanks very much for
Thank you,
talking
Barry.
to us. Okay, thanks.